All right, growing in popularity and ascending in accuracy. It's time for Sharper Square with Chad Millman, CCO, Action Network. All of our odds provided by FanDuel. I had another winning week. You talked me into a couple of games, and I like that. So let's start with my favorite picks. I am a huge fan of Minnesota, but they don't blow anybody away. I've said before, Arizona's too talented not to be competitive. They get extra time to prep. They're getting now 4. I'm going to take Arizona +4 against a team I like a lot, Minnesota, Sharper Square.
So this is generally sharp. Let me give you some background. The wise guys do like the Cardinals. The line actually moved from 4 to 3.5. And there are reasons related to the Vikings that they don't necessarily like Minnesota, but a lot of this is about the return of DeAndre Hopkins. We saw it last week. Kyler Murray and this offense, they are just a different team when DeAndre Hopkins plays. When Kyler Murray has DeAndre Hopkins, he's 17-10 as a starter. Without him, he's 6-13-1. Last week, Hopkins plays for the first time in nearly a year, 10 catches for more than 100 yards. But then there is the part that is about the Vikings. This defense is dreadful. Like they allow the NFL's highest percentage of explosive pass plays. They're 31st in DVOA. They are against wide receiver number ones, which is what Hopkins is. He could have a massively huge day. And this is what's interesting about the Vikings. You know, they're on this hot streak right now, and they're 5-1. They're leading the division. They are consistently outgained on a yards per play basis. And that is a huge wise guy stat. That is a signal that they're not winning because they're better, but because they've been luckier. Wise guys are betting on regression.
Detroit +3.5 at home against Miami. Okay, interesting. Jared Goff and Detroit are a different team at home. If you really watch the Cowboy game, that thing was like 10-6 late, and Detroit should have been leading. I like Miami. They're very good on script, often limited off it. I'm going to take the points. Detroit +3.5, Sharper Square.
I love this. It is my favorite pick of the week. It was the first bet I made. The wise guys love this game. This is a buy low, sell high. Everyone hates the Lions after 2 bad weeks. Everyone loves Miami with Tua back. They won in prime time. But like you said, Detroit is back at home. Detroit is in desperation mode. The world is a better place when we can root for Dan Campbell as an NFL head coach, and they need this game to save their season and for him to save his job. The good news, Amon-Ra St. Brown should be back. DeAndre Swift, full practice this week, not on the injury list. Teams off of bad losses, like the Lions, who the public is fading, like the Lions, cover at a 61% clip since 2005. So the Lions are in a favorable situation as far as precedent. And also the Dolphins, just from an injury point of view, they're playing a lot of 3rd, 4th stringers on the defensive side of the ball. Love the Lions here. Love them.
Third favorite game is Cleveland Monday night +3.5. Here's why. Not only is Jamar Chase excellent, he may be as valuable as any singular wide receiver to a team. He can play multiple wide receiver slots. He is now out. It's a divisional game. Outside of last week, Cincinnati does get into a bad trend of falling behind. Also, a Monday Night Football game in a lot of cities is no big deal. In Cleveland, this is a big deal. The Browns don't get home Monday Night Football games much. It'll be a wild scene. Divisional game, Cincy may win. I'll take the 3.5, Sharper Square.
Yeah, totally sharp. And this is, by Monday night, you know, this game's at 3.5. By Monday night, it'll be down to 3. The wise guys are just going to hammer that hook. The Browns, they don't look very good right now, but they have been losing a lot of close games. Only one loss by more than a field goal this year. And that's what happens when you have the best running back in football in Nick Chubb, and you are going to play a conservative game plan because Jacoby Brissett is proving to be who Jacoby Brissett is and not the guy who started the year really, really hot. The Bengals have looked like they were back. They beat up on the Falcons, but the Falcons in that game lost A.J. Terrell, and they ended up not being able to cover anyone. So the Bengals got the benefit of the doubt of being more explosive. You mentioned Jamar Chase. But this is going to be a spot where the wise guys and you and me are on the Browns.
All right, let's go to the favorites. I like the Jags minus 2.5 in London against the Denver Broncos. They had the Colts beaten to the last play. They played straight up against the Giants. I do feel it's a young team. Young teams can ascend, overcome injuries faster. I think Denver's a mess. I think when you're in crisis, traveling's not the greatest thing. We saw Green Bay a little bit in crisis go on the road and play worse. I'm going to take the Jags minus 2.5, sharp or square.
So that's square. The line opened at 3. It's moved down to 2.5. The money has come in on the Broncos. The tickets are on the Jaguars. That is always a signal that the professionals like the team where the money is moving in their direction. That is the Broncos. When the tickets are on one side, that is the public side. That is the Jaguars in this case. The Jaguars are a challenging team. They're one of those teams that the wise guys have loved the entire season. But Travis Lawrence is missing receivers consistently on the most important plays, red zone throws, deep throws. He's been incredibly inaccurate on the passes that he has to make. And then because they are a young team, you mentioned it, they are just consistently making crucial mistakes in the most important moments. You can see it. There's a false start. They are not converting when it's 4th and short, 3rd and short, when they're on the goal line. The Broncos are a train wreck on offense, but their defense is fierce. And I think there's a lot of fear of what they can do to this very young offense led by Trevor Lawrence. So you're not on the right side here.
Going to take another favorite. Bill Belichick humiliated. They'll come back, cover the spread, minus 2.5 against the Jets. I do not trust the Jets in a big spot. The Jets lost their best and most versatile offensive lineman. The Jets lost their best running back. They bring in James Robinson, but it's late in the week. They're not going to use him much. This is a classic take the team that looked awful last week in a standalone game. The public is fleeing the Patriots. Therefore, I'm on the sharp side, am I not?
You are on the sharp side, Colin, and it's rare for the sharp side to be a road favorite when the team is not very good. But for the things you just said, you are getting a Patriots team that got shellacked by a really bad team. So there's going to be a little bit of a discount in what the line is. It opened at about 1.5. It moved up to 2. Now it's a 2.5. The money is coming in on the Patriots. The flip side, you are getting a Jets team that has been winning, is starting to get a little bit more of a public profile, but they did lose their best player in Breece Hall. And so what kind of impact is it going to have on Zach Wilson, who, if you ask a lot of people how they are grading quarterbacks, he is below number 32. Like, there are quarterbacks who are not even playing at this point who are still graded higher than what Zach Wilson is doing. You have talked about this. We've talked about this. Robert Saleh basically said, I don't know what's going to happen to me in the future with this team, but about 2 weeks into this year, he just decided we're going to be a running football team and we're going to be a defensive football team. I don't care who my quarterback is. That's how they've been winning. How did they overcome the loss of Breece Hall, who probably would have been Rookie of the Year? So that is a big factor for the wise guys.
All right, now a couple of games you may be able to convince me. You turned me last week on the Seahawks, and I do appreciate that. I bought myself a brand new... No, I didn't. I just won. Okay, I'm going to ask you one that's a popular bet. I think Buffalo's going to clobber Green Bay, but I think the first quarter to the first quarter and a half is going to be competitive. I think Matt LaFleur on script will come out with some tricks, be clever, and they'll hang around. I think the second half is all Buffalo. It's 10.5, 11.5, all odds provided by FanDuel. I could never give Aaron Rodgers 11.5, but what do the sharps say?
Well, look, this is a really tough one. And there's sort of a cowardly move that a lot of wise guys will make when they can't really come to a consensus on a game. They'll bet a half, right? And so you see that with, like, on Thursday Night Football, oftentimes they are betting the first half on a game. You see it a lot with the Ravens, because the Ravens have been one of those teams where they can't close people out, but they are amazing in the first half. Also betting against the Cardinals, betting on the Eagles, first half. This is a game where the wise guys are going to be looking at this and saying, okay, what is the opening line for the second half, and probably going to play Buffalo because Josh Allen is a primetime player. He loves to show up big in games that are against the other primetime quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers, obviously, in this scenario. So I think what they're probably going to look for is to see how is this game shaping up, what is the line in the second half, and how can they hit Buffalo in the second half.
All right, time for the game you like I haven't brought up.
Well, listen, you hit dude, you were all over the Lions, which I loved. You were all over the Cardinals, which I loved. I will tell you that this week, in the podcast, the favorites that me and my BFF Simon Hunter do, the most calls we got, we'll do the podcast on Tuesday. We'll talk about every game. Professional bettors will hit us up and say, these are the games that we sort of agreed with and didn't agree with, and they will critique our answers. And then we'll talk about it on Thursday when we do the second podcast of the week. Everyone was talking about the Saints. The Saints at +1.5. And I was surprised.
Yeah, I put it right here. I'll show the audience. I put little boxes by games that I like, and that is the one game I went back and forth on. The Raiders have really kind of changed their offense in the last several weeks. They are now just a running team.
Yeah.
So I don't want to bet against them, but it feels like the Saints is the right side, doesn't it?
Yeah. And that's what the wise guys are saying right now. They're not too worried about who's going to be playing quarterback. A lot of this is about the Saints just got blown out by the Cardinals. So there's a little bit of a discount because that's what the public last saw. The Raiders just beat up the Texans, and Josh Jacobs looked incredible doing it, and they have looked really good the past couple of weeks. But I think that's when they're thinking, okay, it's time to fade. The Raiders going on the road, playing in New Orleans, different scenario, much better defense in the Saints than the Texans. And also in that Texans game, this is where the wise guys make their money, right? They don't just look at the final score. They see the Texans missed a field goal. There was a pick six. They had a drive stall inside the red zone. So there are variances there that make them look at that score and think, oh, the Raiders weren't as dominant as we think. So that's why they're leaning towards New Orleans right now. The other game that's come up a lot, Washington Commanders +3 on the road at the Colts, right? So right now the Colts have decided they're going to start Sam Ehlinger. And
hold on. I have to excuse myself. I'm going to throw up.
You're going to go puke, right?
Would I have to watch? I refuse to bet games I don't want to watch.
By the way, that is a lie because you'll say that to me and then I'll come on this show and you'll say, hey, let's go bet Pittsburgh, Miami. And I'll be like, dude, don't you tell me? Let's bet the Jags and the Titans. And I'm like, you say to me, you don't want to bet games. You don't want to bet the corner TV games.
But Dolphins-Steelers was a standalone game, and I do like watching the Jags because they're a bit of a tire fire. I think the Jags are I like watching the Jags. I don't like watching the Colts and the Commanders.
Listen to me. You can talk yourself out of any box there is. I know this because you're brilliant at this. Washington +3 against Indy. I feel like there's real problems on the Colts right now. I was fascinated when it came out that Matt Ryan was being benched for Sam Ehlinger. So I was reading all the coverage about it, and I love sort of this inside high school drama. Frank Reich basically gave him an it's not you, it's me logic. He's like, we're going to bench you. We haven't delivered on what we promised to you. We thought we'd bring in Matt Ryan. We thought we'd have Jonathan Taylor. We thought we'd have an amazing offensive line. We thought we'd be able to support him. We haven't been able to do that. It's on us. So we're going to have to break up with you and put you on the bench. So now they're bringing in Sam Ehlinger. And the second part of that story is all about who were the decision makers? Jim Irsay, the GM, Frank Reich. If Frank Reich is the decision maker, does he bench Matt Ryan? It feels like there's a little bit of an ownership getting involved here. So now I got a 6th round draft choice who's never started going against a Washington Commanders football team that can actually play well on defense. And I think they're just better with Taylor Heineke. And you're still getting a little bit of that Carson Wentz discount. So that's a game people have been talking about. I know you don't want to do it, but
I really can't talk myself out of anything except an argument with my wife.
Oh yeah.
You know what she'll say? When I start arguing, she'll go, time out. I'm not a caller to your radio show. And I say, I don't take calls. What are you talking about?
I will get my wife will like ask me something and then I'll start explaining something. And she goes, I'm not on your staff, right? Like you don't have to explain it to me as if you need to convince me of something. Like just talk to me like we've been married forever. And that
Yeah.
always feels really good.
Well, I told you, this. Our wives look alike.
Yeah,
Now
yeah,
they talk alike.
yeah. Which to me just feels like they talk alike because they are so sick of us. It's like,
No kidding.
it's not even funny.
I know.
At this
I get
point,
it
I don't
about
even like
once a
my wife
month.
and I, she's so busy. She's an architect, right? She is so busy right
Yeah.
now. I make dinner 4 to 5 nights a week. I am texting her, when do you think you'll be home? I'm not asking because I expect you to be home at a certain time. I just want to know when to start dinner. She'll tell me it's going to be a certain time. Half an hour later, she hasn't come home yet. Me and my 16-year-old son are eating together. I leave food for her. And I can't get upset about it because this was our life for 20 years before like I was
Yeah.
working at home and she's crazy busy. So I just do it. I just do it.
Mm.
And I hope it gets appreciated in some way.
Well, you make dinner 4 times a week. I make reservations 5. So
There
it's
you
all
go.
the same.
You're famous. I got to be frugal, you know?
Yeah, right.
Listen,
Okay.
I can't live your lifestyle.
All right, Millman. Good seeing you, buddy.
All right, man. See you later.